Hey everyone, today we get to learn about giant success strategies, the leadership principles, the business strategies behind the success of Little Giant Ladders. And we've got the one and only Doug Wing on the show with us today to share these principles and strategies that he learned from his father, who's left an amazing legacy. You don't want to miss out. I'll be right back with you with Doug Wing.
This is the Not Your Average Joe Show, where each week we bring you sales, marketing, and mindset strategies you need to get to your next level. And now, here's your host, international business mentor, Joe Soto.
There we are. We've got the one and only Doug Wing with us. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Hey, Joe. Good to see you again. Sorry about the little frog going on in my throat today, but it's really great to see you again, and it's fantastic to be on your show, and I do appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Well, no, this was a no-brainer. I ordered your new book. We're going to talk about your new book, and just fell in love with a lot of the stories. I had had you on the show before. We talked. We gave a sneak peek to some of the principles, but now I've got notes and questions, and so we're going to rapid fire for the next 30 minutes talking about some of these strategies, these business strategies, these success principles, these leadership principles that I think can help everyone and anyone listening, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're just trying to level up in life. I think there's a lot of profound messages that are shared throughout the book, and let's dive right in, can we?
For sure, yeah. This can apply to anyone. Yeah.
Well, let's first. I'll show a picture of the book here. It is this giant success, which is why the title of this show is Giant Success Strategies: Leadership Principles and Business Strategies of Hal Wing, your father, who is the founder of Little Giant Ladders. Now, first of all, there's so many good stories in the book. I'm going to give everyone the kind of the framework of how the book's written. He shares stories throughout the book that were shared from people that were impacted positively from Hal Wing throughout his lifetime. And some of these stories were pretty incredible. With that, at the end of each chapter, you then kind of encapsulate the principles and the ideas, which I really liked how you did it with the Hal ways, right? And the Hal how-tos, which helps kind of materialize and give you the tactics and gives you the promptings, the questions at the end of the chapters to help you integrate some of these principles in your life. And so we're going to share some of those on the show today. But Doug, talk to me a little bit. First of all, give me a brief overview of the history of Little Giant Ladders and how your dad started the company. And then I'm going to take it from there with some questions and kind of guide you on what I think the audience will really greatly benefit from, since not everyone's read this book yet.
Sure. Yeah. So this is the only company.
Little history. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the only company I ever worked for was able to work with my dad and for my dad for 47 years. But the company started in 1972. So my dad was totally selling life insurance, and it was in a totally different field, had no idea about ladders or anything like that. And he was in Germany because he was, bilingual, and he spoke German and English. And this insurance company out of Salt Lake sent him over to Germany to open up an office there. And he had another gentleman he worked with, and his business partner over there, a guy named Richard Miner, saw the ladder, I think at like a home and garden show or something in Germany. And he came back and he was all fired up, and he says to my dad, "You got to see this ladder." And my dad's like, "We're selling insurance. We don't want to do anything with a ladder." But he just kept persisting, and ended up, showing my dad, eventually talk him into going and meeting with the guy that invented the ladder. And my dad was like, "Wow, this is an incredible product." And so my dad came home and told my mom, "Hey, I'm going to quit my job. I want to sell ladders." And she's like, "Well, what do we know about ladders?" And he's like, "Nothing, but we'll figure it out." And keep in mind, my dad was 25 years old, had 7 kids. And so my dad actually we moved back to the United States. My dad bought, like a sample, took it home and started showing people, and door to door, house to house, on all his friends, family, everybody. And he sold a container full of them. And so here's the funny thing is they ship it over, and my dad has a list of everybody, probably on a legal pad or something. And he gets the ladders in, and every person just ghosted my dad on these orders. And they, like, oh, I lost my job, my daughter's getting married, I'm going through divorce, whatever. And so here's my dad with a container full of ladders that he had pre-sold, but he made a mistake. He didn't get the money. And so anyway, he had to go around and, sell these ladders all over again. And so he came up with a demonstration, sells clothes, answers to objections, and he started going around door to door, house to house. And then eventually that turned into, going to trade shows and fairs, and, the rest is history. And yeah, this year is the 50th anniversary of Little Giant. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, you're in the book, you talk about, your dad was willing to take the risk. 7 children, secure job, and he went all in on the ladder business.
Yeah.
To the point where he ended up being on the road 300 days a year for the first few years, going out there and selling the ladders. And for those of you who don't know, Little Giant ladders, they're sold in Home Depot, Lowe's, right around literally everywhere. Ladders are sold pretty much now. You post every once on social media, different people that are using it, and sports teams have used it. And he made a custom one for the Utah Jazz, which was really cool for the mascot. I read that story of it in the book as well. But this one of the quotes that were in that early chapter, I think it was in the first chapter, was that he says patience is a waste of time, which is his way of framing speed of implementation, because he didn't wait around for anything. He just attacked it and went after it. And that's something we can all learn. But one of my favorite early quotes, because he demonstrates it in the way that he ends up treating people later in the book, and a lot of stories that come out around how he treated people, was he says the secret to becoming a great salesperson is to become a great person. And I think that really set the stage for the entire premise of the book about what you can become with the implementation and the adoption of a lot of these principles and strategies. You hit on something that you worked with your dad for, you said 47 years?
47 years, yeah.
Which is incredible. First of all, that you worked with your father for 47 years, along with your brother, right? And he says in the book, he was quoted saying it in the book, that he didn't start the business because he wanted to sell ladders. He wanted to be able to work with his sons. That was more important to him. Did that come through in how he worked with you? Yeah.
And he also said he didn't start the business to become wealthy. He started the business to work with me and my brother. Yeah. And the rest just kind of happened. I mean, it's kind of funny because people would, just come to my dad and say, I need a job. And he would, a lot of times he'd like, well, I don't have one for you, but we'll put you to work. And so, it just kind of went from there. And, the company just started growing like crazy. And yeah, that's the sacrifice that my father put in was incredible. And I doubt that there's very many people today who would sleep in their car and brush their teeth in a gas station bathroom. And, he could only stay in a hotel, probably, he could only stay in a hotel maybe every 4th night or something. So, I mean, how many of us would do that today? It's incredible. Yeah.
I always say that people skills trumps digital marketing skills. And I think his mantra would be people skills trumps everything else in business, based on how he treated people. Tell us about different ways that he made people in his company feel like they were also like owners of the company. What were some things that he did to make people feel like that?
Well, I think my dad was a really good listener, and he loved people. He really did love people, and he wanted to help people. And most business owners, Joe, they come through the front door, they'll say hi to a few people, but they'll go to their office. A lot of people, I've been in businesses where guys will come in and they'll just close the door and do their stuff, and then they leave. My dad literally went through the back door. Keep in mind, he had 400 employees, and he knew every person by name and knew something about them. So I think that's huge. When When
Yeah.
people know that you know who they are and you know what they're dealing with and you know the name of their kids and you know something about them and you take time to get to know them and talk to them and show them that you love and care about them is really something that not very many employers do. And that's something that I really worked hard at, was to know everybody's name, something about them, and spend time with them and show them that you really care about them. And then the culture he created there at Little Giant was amazing. It was more like a big family. We would do little things like, my dad came up with this idea: hey, everybody that works for me is going to have their birthday off with pay. It's just a little something, but it made people feel like, hey, today's my birthday. It's special. I don't have to come to work today, and I get paid
Yeah.
to have my birthday off. And everybody in the management team, my dad, myself, my brother, and our CEO and CFO, we would hand sign a birthday card every year for every employee and give it to them.
Wow.
And so, just little things like that.
And you're talking about how many employees, Doug?
Yeah, 400 plus.
Yeah. So for 400, that's 400 birthdays.
Yeah, but the thing is, you treat people the way you want to be treated, and you love them, and you realize that when they succeed, everybody succeeds. And that's really the philosophy of Hal Wing. Is he was a builder of people. Yeah, he said he was in the ladder business, but really he built people, and then his employees built ladders and helped him succeed.
Not to jump to the end, but one of the ending chapters of the book, and it talks about when your dad passed away, prior to passing away and being in the hospital and knowing he was end of life. And he actually left the hospital, went home. It said, put on a suit, went back to the company to address the employees, with most everyone realizing this is the last time they would ever see him, to essentially help them understand how important that they were to him as a family, not just as employees in the business. And then he went back and checked himself in the hospital, it said, and passed away a few days later. That was really an emotional, not to give away the end of the book, but an emotional way to cement how important the people in his company were to him.
Yeah, I mean, he loved his people, and they knew it. And he was so weak at that time, Joe. He couldn't even walk. He was white. I mean, white as a ghost. And he had to actually get on one of those little jazzy things and ride into Little Giant. He couldn't walk. He couldn't stand. He was so sick, so weak. I'm telling you, there was not a dry eye in that place. People knew that he loved them. He cared about them. He always said that the most important asset we have at Little Giant is not the patents, not the buildings, not our products. It is the people. And he believed it, and he treated people that way, and they loved him for it, and he loved them. And I'm telling you, our employees would literally climb mountains for us because they knew how much we loved and cared about them.
Okay. I mean, this was, the entire book, I think, it could have been a book on just culture because of how he treated people. But there were so many different examples of how he walked the talk. That was one of them. And I know I jumped to the end because it just stood out so profoundly in my mind. But in chapter 3, you title it, Choose to Love What You Do, which is different than Do What You Love. And so I really just sat and meditated on that sentence for a moment. And then the chapter went into some specifics, but choosing to love what you do, meaning, the work that you're in, and choosing to enjoy not just the highlights of your work, but the actual work that's involved, is something that your dad taught. Speak a little bit to that mindset.
Yeah, my dad had such a great attitude. He showed no fear. He just always stayed positive, and he loved, like I said, he loved what he did. He loved people. He loved our products. He loved our company, but really he loved, what he did. He loved people, and he just put everything he had. He had this incredible passion. Like, if you ever go back and watch some of the infomercials that you'll still see, he did that entire infomercial. They handed him a script that was like a ream of paper, and he just goes, "I'm not doing this." He goes, "I know what to do. I know what to say." And he did all of that off the cuff. And if you think about that, I mean, it was incredible. He just had so much passion for the product, for the company, for what we stood for, and the people that worked for him. That he just was overflowing with enthusiasm, with self-belief, and just he loved his love for his people, and even people that we dealt with, like vendors and bankers and things like that. He always said, if it's not a good deal for everybody around the table, then it's not a good deal. He treated everybody so fair, almost more than fair. And if he erred, it was on being too generous. But man, it came back to him in spades. And he kept his people. One thing is that I recognize about Little Giant is how loyal his people were to him, because he was loyal to them and loved them. And man, I'll tell you what, like I said before, our people were so loyal to us. There's a guy in the book, Jerry Jessen, he's retired now, but he said, now think about the people that you've had as bosses as you were growing up, Joe. He said, I knew your dad loved me so much and cared about me so much that I didn't want to disappoint him. And that made me work even harder for him, because I knew how much he loved and cared about me. Now, how many people have you worked for that you can say that about them as a boss?
That you worked harder because of how they made you feel in advance.
Not very many, I don't think, that you
No.
knew, this guy loves me, this lady, whatever, he or she, they love me so much, I'm going to just bust my rear end for him.
Yeah. As a way of like honoring them back. That's amazing.
And so, it was just incredible that people felt that way about him and just knew that this was a great man, and he loves me and he wants the best for me. Yeah,
I love that. I also took a note. One of my favorite parts when he was talking about there's two types of employees that you have to watch out for. And he says, number one, the employee who doesn't want to do what they've been told. And number two, the employee who does only what they're told. How did that show itself in the company?
Well, that's one thing that was really amazing too about my father is that, he wasn't a micromanager. He knew the strengths. He knew where to put people in the bus, like, made sure that the square peg went in the round peg in the round. And he was so good about knowing where to put people and what their strengths and weaknesses were. And man, he was such a motivator. And he had this ability, Joe, I always tell people how Wing saw people not in their current state, but he saw potential in people and what they could become. And he had this unique ability to build that and mentor that person. Like, for example, Ryan Moss, who's the CEO of the company, never went to a day of college and started out low man on the pole in manufacturing, worked his way all the way up to the company and became CEO of the business and is still there as CEO. And Hal Wing had this ability to see that in Ryan. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, and he's a genius. I mean, he's the guy who developed all these products, these new technologies for Little Giant. And Hal Wing is the one guy that saw that. And, a lot of us were like, whoa, what's he doing with this guy, but he did. And so he had this unique ability to see talent in people and then to bring it out of them and to give them the confidence and really mentor people and bring out the best in them.
He has a great quote in the book, and tell me if I get this right. He says that Hal planted the seeds and we all get to enjoy the shade.
Yeah. That was when I interviewed.
He planted all the trees and we get to enjoy all the shade, he said.
Exactly. And that's the thing that, as you read this book, and we would have nothing without Hal Wing. That guy sacrificed everything for us.
That's legacy.
And he built this huge, like you said, created this huge legacy. And now it's up to, I'm no longer with the company. We sold it. But I think there's still that culture there of, hey, we have this great business and let's continue to grow it and keep this legacy alive.
There's a lot of stories in the book, and a lot of the stories are shared by people that you interviewed or who were willing to share how they got impacted by Hal's principles. And there was a story of that you tell in the book of how there was a gentleman that was a 25-year employee who had a Timex watch who would always compliment Hal on his Rolex watches or on his watches. And one day he had a Rolex watch on, and the employee stops him again and tells him how much he loves his watch. And he says, I've been thinking about that. I like your watch. And how about we trade? And he traded him his Rolex for the Timex, which I thought was brilliant. And the impact that probably had on the employee that had been there 25 years, who had shown that type of loyalty, that had shown that type of dedication to his craft and work, did not fall by the wayside with your father. I think that was a cool story.
Yeah, that gentleman, Gabriel, he's a real great guy, Hispanic guy who still works at Little Giant, and he's still there. Yeah, he's been there for a long, long time.
Yeah, and he's still there. That's incredible. I wrote this down because I'm going to use this. He says, treat your employees like a campfire. Don't get too close to them that you get burned, but don't stay so far away that you freeze to death. I thought that's brilliant.
Yeah, that was a quote from my grandfather to my dad. And I will tell you that my dad probably erred a little bit on the closeness side, but
yeah,
he was good friends with so many of his employees. And my father was really successful, but he did not have a lot of wealthy friends. He thought a lot of wealthy people were a little stuffy and kind of arrogant. And he just hung out with a lot of his employees. He would take employees with him and my mom to Europe and pay for the entire vacation. Took so many people on trips to Europe with their spouses and paid for everything. He wouldn't let them pay for anything. And he was just such a giver.
We talked about at the beginning about how he took the risk to start the business. He went all in when he had security and a job. He had 7 children he was providing for. What do you tell someone, Doug, who is afraid to take a leap or to take a risk in today's kind of world right now? Like we're in a, changing times. We're coming out of a, crazy, global pandemic, and everything's trying to get back to normal. But what do you tell someone to inspire them to take that extra risk and go for it?
Well, man, I'll tell you, I saw so many times where my dad rolled the dice. I mean, a lot of people see Little Giant and they go, man, this is a great company and they made so much money and they're huge and everything, but it wasn't always like that. And there were so many times when we had our backs to the wall. And I will tell you that self-belief is a big, big, big part of success. And also you've got to put the work into it, right? You've got to have a good plan. But my dad had this incredible self-belief. There were so many times when people were like, we're going down, we're going to lose everything, and the company's going to implode. And there was one guy that some people would come in, I can't, I'm too stressed out, I'm going to quit. And my dad's like, yeah, you can go work somewhere else. But we've made it. We've always made it, and we're always going to make it. He had this belief, and we always just made it through. And he also said, though, Joe, that it's a lot better working for yourself than it is for other people. So, which I have come to learn that it is true. When you're the boss and it's your company, it's a lot, there's a lot of risks, but there's also a lot of rewards. And you know this as well, because you own several companies. But so I would just say that, man, this is the land of opportunity. We still live in the greatest country in the world. Yes, we're coming out of, a 2-year thing where we had a pandemic and people are hurting. I mean, but I see so many opportunities out there that as we come back out of this and go back into normal, and the economy yes, right now, we're kind of in an inflationary period. But again, I do believe that we're going to come out of this and that there's going to be lots of opportunities for those who, are, and I would say take calculated risks, don't do anything crazy, know what your risks are, but, take a risk and take a chance, and this is still a great country, and, good things can happen, through a lot of hard work and good planning, and you got to have a good attitude, though. You got to keep your head into it.
Mike asked the question. He says, how would you start with a small company, building the right culture with the balance and forth mentality with the younger generation, looking for perks and bonuses elsewhere, care more? How do you get them to care more? Um, in today's day and age, people, if they're at a job 2 years, it's like an eternity, but you're talking about employees that have been at Little Giant for over 25 years, you working for your dad and working with your dad for 47 years and really leading the company to that next level. You're very humble and very modest in talking about your direct success that you've had, but you were an instrumental, spoke in the wheel to get that company to where it ended up growing to. So I applaud you. And I also know that, you learned a lot of these principles from your father, but I've heard other things supplemental to that come out from you. How would you answer that? Like, how about with a small company, how would you address the younger generation employees? What would you say?
That's a tough one, Mike, because, we are living in a society now that people are kind of thinking they're entitled, right? A lot of the younger generation now are thinking they're entitled. A lot of guys coming out of college and they're like, I want to make 200,000 a year. I want a big house. I want the fancy cars. And there's still good people out there. I would just pick people that have strong work ethics. Number one, my dad he grew up on a farm. And so when we were looking for salespeople or, other positions, we would always try to find people who grew up with a real strong work ethic. And where I lived in Utah, we have, mostly our faith there is LDS. And so you have a lot of young men and young women that go on missions for 2 years and go out and knock on doors. And we would always try to find somebody like that had a real strong work ethic. They worked on a farm, or they went on these missions and they had the people skills. And we also hired for attitude. That's what I would recommend, is look for good work ethic, look for attitude. My dad says we can teach people how to sell ladders or build ladders, but it's very difficult to teach people how to have a good attitude. And so my recommendation would be find somebody who doesn't have the entitlement mentality, and they're out there. You're going to have to weed through some. Find people who have a good work ethic, and then find people who are happy and positive, and then you take care of those people. You mentor them, you take care of them, and you incentivize them, and then treat them very well, and you'll be able to hang on to those people.
He talks about you have a chapter called Change Starts With Me, and I talk a lot about self-responsibility. What would be your advice to somebody who maybe gets too caught up in the blame of external things, circumstances that happen in the world, or they're blaming people that they work with, or they're blaming their boss, or they're blaming failures that they've had? What kind of self-responsibility mindset, the Change Starts With Me advice, would you give a young person who's watching this right now and maybe contemplating, how do I level up and get to that next level of my business?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good question. I grew up with a dad that, man, this guy had just this unbelievable self-belief. And, some of that rubbed off on me, and I'm grateful for that. And my mom was the same way. They just taught us that we could do anything in life if we worked hard enough and, kept our attitude good and applied ourselves. And so I would just encourage people, to educate themselves and, like read good books, listen to good programs. I grew up with my dad, excuse me, Joe. And my dad was either listening to Willie Nelson on 8 tracks or cassettes, or we were listening to Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and all these. And, when you're a teenager, you're like, what are we listening to all this stuff for? But, some of that stuff rubbed off on me. And so
Sure.
I would say fill your mind with really good, positive things.
I love that.
And, keep your mind, because you think about it, there's so much negativity in the world today. And I would say fill your mind with good things and really work on yourself. Stay positive, be a good worker, do extra. If you go out and you work for somebody and you come to work 10 minutes before you're supposed to be there, and you leave 30 minutes after everybody else, and you just bust your rear end and you have a good attitude, you're going to go places and you're going to learn a lot, and people will take notice. Because nowadays, some of the people that we have in the workforce will do the bare minimum, and they'll complain, they'll have bad attitudes. But if you'll have a great attitude, work hard, and outdo everybody else, you'll always be successful. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I asked my the coaches a couple years ago of my son's track team, and they've won national cross country championships, and my son's been fortunate to be part of 4 state championship teams, being part of the indoor and outdoor track seasons that they coached here for, and they just moved on a couple years ago. But I asked them one time, like, how are you guys so much better than all these other area track teams and cross country squads? Like, what's the difference? And I'll never forget Mark, who's the coach, who answered me, and he said, I really think, Joe, we just outwork everyone.
Yeah.
And I said, you think that's the secret sauce? Like, I want to hear the silver bullet here. He goes, no. He goes, like, I've shared our workout plans with other coaches. I've been complete open book to what we do to train. And I just don't think there's a team that works as hard as our kids do and will follow a program that kind of requires and asks that type of work ethic from the kids. And as a result, my son has been, a runner and going to be competing at a Division I university this fall. And because of that work ethic that was instilled through his team as well. So sometimes it is just about outworking other people.
Hal Wing had all these quotes are in the back of the book, and one of them was, "The harder I work, the luckier I get."
Yeah,
and there is truth to that.
Yeah,
he just outworked people, and I'll give you an example. We had every year the salesman had to work in manufacturing for one week, and they called it Hal Week, but then the guys changed it to Hell Week because it was like 2-a-days in football or whatever.
Yeah.
Hard, but I'll tell you what that taught the sales guys, 2 things. One, it gave them an appreciation for those that were building the products and that did that day in and day out for years. And then 2, it really helped them to know when people would come in and they'd say, well, why do you weld this rung here? Or why do you put that rivet there? They'd say, oh, I know why, because I built those ladders. But the first guy that was out in manufacturing, even in his 60s and 70s, building ladders every year was Hal Wing. Now think about that. Here's the owner of the company, the chairman of the board, the guy that is a multimillionaire, and he's out there building ladders, leading by example. What do you think that message was to the other sales guys and to the people that were here? He was rubbing shoulders, running punch presses with guys that were making $15 an hour. And here's a guy, who's worth so much money, and he's right there with them. And what do you think that message was to the other employees? It was like, wow, this guy's unbelievable. He loves us. He cares about us. He loves this company. And he sets the example. It's incredible.
You talk about, he did these, he went over and above, he did extra things. One of the funny stories it wasn't really funny, I just thought it was really intriguing, was that he would dress up. He loved Halloween. So he'd dress up for Halloween and he would go out and pass out oversized candy bars, giant sized candy bars.
King size candy bars.
Yeah. To the kids in the community. You'd go to Main Street, it said. And that they still do that today. They will honor him on Main Street and pass out giant size candy bars during Halloween, because he used to love to dress up and go do that kind of thing. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, my dad had this humongous heart. I mean, and he just loved people, and he'd dress up. I mean, he'd come in all these outfits and walk by and he would hand all the employees, a great big Kit Kat bar or whatever. And go to Costco and order these, and you have cases of them come. But yeah, he was so amazing. His generosity was just over the top. And what a great guy to work for. I mean, just an unbelievable human. And the thing that I love about his giving was he did most of his giving. I mean, 99% of it was all anonymous. People had no idea who it was. And it was just amazing that way.
Yeah. And the people that did know, he asked them not to say anything. Of course, after he passed on, a lot of them thought, well, it's okay now to share that he bought a car for people. He would buy, he really just took care of people, like you said. And, I think that this people first, this people centered, this people first strategy in your business can go a long way. He let faith guide him. The principles behind his faith kind of dictate that moral compass for him. I think that was a big lessons in the book. There's so many stories like this, everyone in the book. but you've already heard all these little principles, even in the short time that we're here together, Doug. Where can people get a copy of the book? I heard they can get a signed copy of the book, right?
Yes, they can. Of course, it's available, like at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. But if you go to dougwing.com or giantsuccess.com, either one, dougwing.com has a place where they can order as well. So yeah, if you want to get a signed copy of the book, they're available in paperback or hardback, and we can take care of that for you and get one sent to you. But this book is great because, as you were talking about, Joe, is whether you need help in your family relationship or whether you need help, in your business or anything that you're working on, this book can help you in any situation. I mean, even as a married couple, the principles that are in this book are you can use them for any relationship. And what was incredible is this book from day one, the first day that this book went live, I mean, it was #1 in its category on Amazon. And I will say that the reason for that is it's not anything that Doug Wing did, but these stories are so incredible and people are so touched by these stories of Hal Wing. I'm just the guy that put them all together, but he was such an incredible human that, that it just took off. So
they can go to giantsuccess.com or they can go to dougwing.com. They'll find their way to this page as well, and they can order a signed copy directly off your site.
Exactly. Yeah,
terrific.
Yep. So anyway, just an amazing man. And in this book, we teach you, how to apply those things into your lives and to put people first. On the building at Little Giant, there's a plaque that's actually screwed right into the building that says, if you concentrate on building the business and not the man, you will not achieve. But if you concentrate on building the man, you achieve both. And so, Zig Ziglar said it another way: you can get anything you want to in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And that's really the philosophy of Hal Wing, was build people, and the rest will come. The rest will come, and it does. I mean, in my life, I've seen that. Take care of people, build them, help them, love them, serve them, treat them the way that you want to be treated, and the rest will come.
Tell us a little bit about, you have a new project coming out too. You're working on a different type of book.
So about 2 months ago, I was having dinner in Scottsdale, Arizona with Mark Victor Hansen, who's wildly successful, with Chicken Soup for the Soul, co-creator. And I'm telling, he's asking me, some stories about this book. I'm telling him some stories, and he said, check your phone. I just endorsed your book. I'm giving you an endorsement for Giant Success. And he wasn't my publisher, which is really kind of unheard of. And I was like, wow, thank you very much. And when dinner got over, he looks at me and he says, people need to know about you. They need to hear your message.
Yeah.
There's something about you. He goes, I can't describe it, but he said, I love Hal Wing. I didn't even know him. I knew of him. And he goes, and I love you. And he goes, I would like to sign you to a publishing contract, a 3-year publishing contract. And I was like, to do what? And he's like, we're going to write books together. So I'm actually working on and he does a lot of fiction books right now. But what we're doing is he said, I know you have a lot more stories about your business and your life and your father's life. And he says, I want to do an entire series. They will be true stories, but we will fictionalize the characters, and there'll be an entire series about you and your father. And so I'm actually working on the first book right now with their company, and it's going very well. I'm excited. I retired at 55 years old.
Yeah.
And was fortunate enough to do that. And I was like, okay, I got involved in some, real estate and other things, nothing really day to day. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life the next, several years? And it's really interesting, Joe, when one door closes, another door opens.
Yeah.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think that this, I knew I was going to do this book for a legacy and to help people. But never in my wildest dream did I think I was going to write other books. And now this is turning into speaking engagements and sharing this message of, Hal Wing and my experiences in life with how to work with people. And it's just been incredible. I'm so blessed. I love it.
Well, I'm so excited to be in your orbit here and have you on here. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us, to share some of these stories of inspiration, writing the book, getting these stories out there. I agree with Mark. I work with Mark, on a couple different things, and I couldn't agree more. And I know that him and Crystal are excited to be working with you, and I can't wait to see what's next from you, Doug. And I know that the speaking engagements are starting up, and I'm going to be in Scottsdale sometime in the fall, and hope to have you come speak to the group. And I just love to be able to see what you're doing here, and appreciate you getting this message out there. This is awesome.
Well, you're way too kind, and I always say I give Hal Wing all the credit. I mean, he's an incredible mentor, incredible dad, incredible boss,
Of course.
I always tell people, there were times that my dad got after me and I deserved it. But one thing that was incredible about him, even as a boss, if he had to, kind of chew your ear a little bit, he always came back afterward and showed that increase afterwards, an increase of love to his employees. Yeah. And I think that was part of his success is, if you deserve to, kind of get chewed on a little bit, he would do it. But then he came back and told you why he did it, how much he loved you and valued you and appreciated you as me as his son, but also as, to his employees. And he just had this huge, amazing heart, and the love he had for people was just over the top. And
that's a family and parenting lesson as well.
Yeah. Like I said,
William James was the first to say it. He was one of the first people to write on the subject of psychology. And he says, the greatest human needs that need to be appreciated. And your dad embodied that in everything that he did at his company. And I think that being able to show that to your children, to your employees, to your spouse is something to take to heart. So great.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, when my dad passed away, I remember the governor of Utah, Gary Herbert, he gave a talk, and he said, Hal Wing always told people he was in the ladder business. That wasn't true. Hal Wing was in the people business. Yeah. And so what a tribute to him is, and I'm grateful that I can share these principles and philosophies and with the world, because I know, I've been told this book really is going to make a difference. And that just makes me so happy to be able to help other people and in any relationship, like we talked about before, whether it's family or spouses or friends or in business relationships and with customers too. If you take these principles and you start treating your customers this way, wow, watch out, because your business is going to grow like crazy.
Yeah, such valuable insight there, because you've taken the principles outside from inside that were fostered inside the company and grew the company to be great, and now you're paying tribute and helping people in their own companies and their own businesses be able to implement this to grow. And we're all in the people business. That's the lesson of the day to take from Doug here. That's it for our time, Doug. I appreciate you. I hope you come back again. Can't wait to see your next book come out. I'm sure everybody's going to be lining up for it. In the meantime, God bless you, and thank you for being on here.
Thank you. Tell Lene hi and your kids and everybody. And I look forward to seeing you in Phoenix when you come. I look forward to it.
I can't wait. So everybody, see you next week on the Not Your Average Joe Show. And as you can see, Doug, definitely Not Your Average Joe Show. If you haven't gone to giantsuccess.com yet and picked up your copy, go do that. Signed copy on your way from Doug if you do. Doug, until next time, see everyone.
Thank you.
Tune in next week for the Not Your Average Joe Show with international business mentor Joe Soto.